Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Myself Farhan Jalis Ahmed from Hamdard University, New Delhi, and today we are going to discuss about module entitled Characterization of Colloidal Drug Delivery Systems. It comes under the paper Novel Drug Delivery Systems Part 2. Now the main objective which we will cover in this module, we will talk about various techniques which are basically used for the characterization of colloidal drug delivery systems, and we also discuss their advantages and their applications of characterization in colloidal drug delivery systems. The colloidal drug delivery system is characterized for different parameters like the mean diameter of particles and their size distribution, morphology and their surface charge, infrared analysis and NMR analysis, diffraction scanning calorimetry and X-ray diffraction studies, encapsulation efficiency, in vitro release studies, and so on. In this module, we will emphasize the various techniques which are being used for the characterization of colloidal drug delivery systems. Now I'd like to give you an introduction. The vesicular dosage forms, they are basically made up of polymers, lipids, which are in the size range of from nanometers to micrometers, and they are combinedly they are known as colloidal drug carriers. These CDCs or colloidal drug carriers, they can successfully transport the loaded drug to the target site, and they can also improve their therapeutic index by enhancing or reducing their toxicity. Various natural polymers, synthetic polymers, they can be used to formulate these colloidal drug carriers, such as proteins like albumin, carbohydrates like chitosan. Then there are chemically modified carbohydrates like polydextran, polystarch, or polymethyl methacrylate, and epoxy polymers. So all these polymers can be used. Now for the characterization of these colloidal carriers, there are different techniques which can be used, like we have to measure the particle size, we have to measure the particle size distribution, their shape, what is the surface morphology, whether surface is rough, surface is smooth, either it is covered by some other material, then what is the charge which is known as zeta potential. Then we can also use infrared spectroscopy, Raman spectroscopy. So these studies can help. Then nuclear magnetic resonance studies like NMR studies, differential scanning calorimetry, which is also known as DSC studies, then XRD or X-ray diffraction studies. Then we have to measure the encapsulation efficiency because it reflects the amount of drug which is basically being encapsulated or being loaded inside the system. Then its lamellarity and in vitro drug release profile, how much drug is going to be released from the systems, because the amount of drug which is going to be released, obviously it is going to have the effect. If amount is not released properly, then there is not going to be any therapeutic effect. These colloidal systems, they have been found widespread applications in drug delivery, in gene therapy, and also in medical imaging. They can be used for drug targeting, they can be used for bioresponsive triggered systems, and they can also be used for self-regulated drug delivery systems. Now in this schematic representation of particles of size distribution curve, the quasi-elastic laser light scattering with the zeta sizer is used to determine the average particle size and size distribution of colloidal carrier suspension. The polydispersity index can also be evaluated as a measure of the particle size distribution of the dispersion. If you see in the graph, you can see it is being mentioned about zeta average, which is the particle size average. Then they have shown various peaks, which are peak 1 is about 280 nanometers, peak 2 there is no peak 2, there is no peak 3 because it's only a monodispersed single peak data. So this is the representation of size distribution curve. Yeah, one of the most important technique is dynamic light scattering, or it is popularly known as DLS. A small part of the parallel ray of light on passing through a transparent system, it gets sprinkled elastically due to the optical discontinuities in the medium. These scattering is known as Rayleigh scattering. The solution which contains polymer molecules, that has been shown some supplementary scattering due to the presence of solid molecules, and this form the basis to determine the concentration, to determine the size of the particles as well as shape of the polymer molecules or the particles or CDCs. This technique is a very important technique because by this technique we can measure the size, we can see the shape and we can see the characteristic of the suspended particles. The average size and molecular weight of the polymers solutes, it can be determined by measuring the differences between scattered light intensity of the polymer solution and of the solvent. So the difference between the two will tell you the size. Optical microscopy has resolution in the micro size range to provide the information about the structure of the particle, structure of the substance in the micron size range. By means of transmitting light, slight film of sample is shed on the slide of the microscope to examine under the microscope. When a fine grid of light passes through the sample in which the absorption coefficient is varied regionally, then the resultant image will occur with the contrast regions. Polarized light microscopy and phase contrast microscopy are used commonly to attain the contrast. Polarized light microscopy utilized the cross polarizers by rotating the plane polarized light to get the structural data of the sample. The polarizing microscopy is used to examine the construction of the liquid crystals of polymers and can also be applied. Reflected light microscopy is employed to look into the structural types of solid polymers. Now about scanning electron microscopy, which is also popularly known as SEM. It is a type of electron microscopy having the resolution of up to nanosize range. It is also used to characterize the surface morphology of the colloidal vesicles. In scanning electron microscopy, a thin grid of electron crosses an opaque specimen, and detectors from every point collected the emitted electrons to produce a remarkable three-dimensional image with an enormous depth of the field. In scanning electron microscopy, a drop of colloidal system or sample is mounted on a clear glass system. This is dried in the air, and then it is coated with a splitter coater and then examined under SEM. To produce the stable images, the sample before examination is coated with a conducting film of gold or gold palladium alloy of a thickness of about 20 nanometer by means of evaporation or by means of sputtering. Now in this technique, you can clearly see the surface characteristic, you can clearly see the shape of the particles as you can see in the image which is shown on the screen. Now in transmission electron microscopy, an incident electron beam is passed through a thin foil specimen. The incident electrons interacting with the specimen are transformed to elastically scattered electrons. Unscattered electrons are inelastically scattered electrons. Now the proportion of the space between the objective lens and the specimen, the space between the objective lens and its image plane, it determines the magnification. You can clearly see the image which is being shown on the screen. Now photon correlation spectroscopy is a technique which is applied to measure the size and size distribution of the submicron particles of a range of about from 5 nanometer to 5 micron meter. The principle of this technique is that smaller particles, they travel with higher velocity in comparison to larger particles. The submicron particles, they causes diffraction of laser beam present in the suspension. These rapid fluctuations causes diffusion of particles of the laser around a mean value at a definite angle, which varies from 10 to about 90 degree, and it depends upon the particle size. So indirectly we are measuring the particle size. The measured photoelectrons time correlation function yields a histogram of the line width distribution, which can be related uniquely to the particle size. So this technique is used to measure the particle size. This analysis is tested using simulated data with both unimodal as well as bimodal size distribution. The technique determines the average particle size, which ranges from about 3 nanometer to about 3000 nanometers. The measurements results in polydispersity index, the average and mode effective hydrodynamic diameter as a measure of the width of the distribution. Now another technique by which we can directly see the particles, although we cannot see the entire population, is microscopy. Microscopy is used as a most important instrument for the characterization of colloidal carrier system. This technique can also be used to scrutinize morphology, to scrutinize size and distribution of colloidal carriers, as well as the interaction of colloidal carriers with the biological environment in which it is being placed. Now, various microscopic techniques which are available for the characterization of these types of systems or these types of colloidal systems, they include traditional optical microscopy which we use in the labs, then specialized like transmission electron microscopy which is known as TEM, then scanning electron microscopy which is known as SEM, and also scanning tunneling microscopy scanning photo probe microscopy, and super resolution microscopy. Let's talk about scanning probe microscopy. Scanning probe microscopy or SPM techniques also includes two other techniques that are known as atomic force microscopy and scanning tunneling microscopy for studying the surface structure of the colloidal carrier. These are the techniques which are basically responsible for the revolution in the nanoscience, because after the development of AFM or STM, we are only be able to see the particle sizes or see the structure which are in the nanosize range. The essential components of STM include a sharp scanning tip, a scanner controlling the drift of the tip, a control unit to determine the position of the peak, a vibration isolation stage, and a feedback regulation electronics. You can see the image, which is in this SPM image you can see the resolution which is being shown here. In scanning tunneling microscopy or STM, an excavating current is running between the metallic tip and a conducting substrate, and this produces electron density images of the conductive or semi-conductive surfaces and biomolecules which are attached on the conductive substrates at the atomic scale. A low potential difference is applied between the scanning tip and the surface to produce the tunneling of the electrons, and then the refraction of the encountering current can be read when the point moves through the sample in the XY plane. This will generate a map of the charge density of the surface. Now in atomic force microscopy, a van der Waals force exists between the tip and the surface. The electrical current which is flowing between sample and the tip can be broken to generate a three-dimensional morphological image of the colloidal carrier with a resolution of nanometer size range. Now with this image, we can clearly see the roughness, the smoothness of the surface with a size range of about nanometer. Atomic force microscopy can be used for scrutinizing the shape, size, structure, dispersion, sorption, and aggregation of the colloidal carriers by employing different scanning modes. It is also be able to characterize the interaction of colloidal carriers with supported lipid bilayers. You can see in the image how clearly you can see the surface structure as well as the depressions which are there on the surface, and you can also measure the depth of those depressions. So with this development, we can clearly map the surface of an electronic chip, of a biological sample, and we can also generate these samples by using that electronic tip. Super resolution light microscopy or SRLM, it is a light microscopy technology which allocates the performance by imposing the diffraction properties of light according to the Ebb's equation, and also exceeding the resolution to the nanosize range. So in this case, the image can be resolved up to nanosize range. In this case, a laser is used to produce the fluorescence excitation, and images are taken through a digital camera which is charged by multiplying electrons. And you can see in the schematic representation where you can enlarge the dots which are in micron size range to the nanosize range, and you can see their depth also. In SRLM technique, epoxy sections prepared for routine transmission electron microscopy, and they are cut from the block of tissues for examination under super resolution fluorescence light microscopy. Super resolution techniques allow the capture of images with a high resolving power than the diffraction limit. They descend into two broad categories: functional super resolution techniques, which use clever experimental techniques and known limitations on the subject being imaged to reconstruct a super resolution picture. True super resolution techniques which capture information contained in the evanescent waves. Now in case of transmission electron microscopy, the advantage is that it can facilitate the investigation of particular morphological features like crystal structure and its orientation by providing an electron diffraction pattern from a selected region. So in this case, we can see the crystal structure in a very small size range, especially in nanosize range. The scale bar for the electron micrograph is used to determine the diameter of the colloidal formulations, their aggregation pattern, aggregation is dispersion, and dynamic displacement of colloidal carriers in an aqueous environment in the given sample. The most significant application of TEM is the atomic resolution real space imaging of the nanoparticles, because by this we can clearly see that what is the size of the particle, we can clearly see what is the shape of the particle, we can clearly see how it is interacting with its atmosphere, its environment. So TEM has an advantage over scanning electron microscopy because it provides better spatial resolution and it has more capacity for additional analytical measurements. If you see in the image, that is the image of a freeze fracture electron microscopy of a surface sample. The process of freeze fracture technique consists of actually rupturing congealed biological sample to obtain the structural details by envisaging the splinter plane by vacuum deposition of platinum carbon to make a model to examine under the transmission electron microscope. Freeze fracture replication technique is mainly used for the direct investigation of the three-dimensional structure of the particles because it is in the freeze state and you can see the various planes after cutting various planes through the samples, and you can clearly see the surface characteristic, the complete surface morphology in the freeze state. Now let's talk about zeta potential. In an ionic solution, the charged particle surface is firmly bound to the opposite charged ions, which leads to forming a thin liquid layer known as Stern layer. It is determined by measuring the velocity of the charged species towards the electrode in the existence of an external electric field across the sample solution. The mean hydrodynamic diameter and polydispersity index of the particles are calculated with cumulant analysis by getting the whole of the three measurements. The zeta potential measurements are used to predict the stability by quantifying these electronic interactions. Zeta potential is a very important surface property because it affects the behavior, it affects the properties of the particles, how they are going to interact with other particles or how they are going to interact when they enter the biological systems or biological membranes, because biological membranes are also electronically charged. So when these particles, if they are negatively charged, they have a different behavior towards positive charged membrane. If they are positively charged, they have a different behavior towards the biological membranes. So it is an extremely important phenomenon. Zeta potential is affected by the concentration of surfactants and amount of polymer. Many polymers like poly-E-caprolactone, poly-D-lactide and lecithins, they convey a negative charge to the surface, whereas non-active surfactants, they reduce the zeta potential. So by using these surfactants or by using these polymers, we can increase or decrease or change the zeta potential according to our requirement. Now let's talk about infrared and Raman spectroscopy. A molecule undergoes various forms of vibration, each comprising of an intricate combination of bond stretches and deformations. The molecules, which exist in its ground state at a low temperature and excited to a high energy state on absorbing radiant energy. This energy corresponds to the energy differences, that is delta E, between the excited state and ground state of the same molecule, and it is a very characteristic property. Now in the image you can see the sample of a FTIR spectra. Now in a sample the spectral transitions are observed by scanning through the entire infrared frequency region, which is 400 to 4000 per centimeter. Now and continuously supervising the intensity of transmitted light. IR spectroscopy is used as an important tool to recognize the functional groups with their modes of attachment, and in some cases the absorption spectrum is also used as a molecular fingerprint to identify a unknown molecule or given molecule. Now in Raman spectroscopy, it is another vibrational spectroscopy technique, and this technique provides structural information regarding the molecule by sensing the inelastic dispersions of the photons. The vibrational energy of the molecule in its ground state is the scattered energy of the photon experiments. Raman spectroscopy is normally considered to be corresponding to IR spectroscopy. You can see various peaks which are denoting various groups in the image which is shown here. So different peaks, they are for different functional groups. Now in this we prepare epoxy sections, and as we prepare for routine transmission electron microscopy, and are cut from the block of tissue for examination under super resolution fluorescence light microscopy. Super resolution technique allow the capture of images with a higher resolving power than the differential limit. They descend into two broad categories: functional super resolution techniques, which uses clever experimental techniques, and also limitation on the subject being imaged to reconstruct a super resolution picture. True super resolution technique, which captures the information which are contained in the evanescent waves. In the case of NMR, the changes or displacements in the resonance are known as chemical shifts. The measurement of chemical shift is done in parts per million, in ppm. Tetramethylsilane is chemically inert and it is used as a reference for chemical shift. NMR is used both in solid state as well as in solution state to study the microstructural configurations of the polymers. It is used to identify certain atoms or groups along with their positions in a polymer molecule by 1, 2 and 3 dimensional spectra. Now in this image you can see the typical NMR spectra. NMR spectroscopic analysis has also been gone through to determine several physiochemical characteristics of nanomaterials, including their structure, their purity and functionality in colloidal carriers like dendrimers, polymers and fluorine derivatives, as well as conformational changes which are occurring in the interactions between ligands and nanomaterials. It gives extremely important information while developing in nanomaterials on nanoparticles and their behavior. Another important technique which is used for the characterization of colloidal carriers is differential scanning calorimetry or DSC studies. You can see this is the image of a typical DSC analysis which is showing a endothermic peak. DSC apparatus, it is used for the thermal analysis, basically to measure the changes in physical properties of a specimen due to the variations in the temperature against time. DSC examine the magnitude of heat absorbed or heat radiated by the sample on the basis of difference in temperature between the sample and the reference material. So DSC is a study in which we see the behavior of the substances when they are exposed to the temperature. We can measure their melting point, we can measure their transformations, whether those transformations are exothermic or endothermic when they are exposed to a specific temperature range. Now the molecular information which is offered by Raman spectroscopy, it can be employed to investigate the conformation of the tissue factors and concentration, which shows the potency of the RS for detecting tissue abnormalities. This is a very important technique. The execution of surface enhanced Raman scattering technique, it can strongly improve RS signals and increase spatial resolution, while the measured biomolecules are adhered to the surface of the metallic construct. Now recently emerging techniques of Raman spectroscopy is the tip enhanced Raman spectroscopy or TRS, and this provides topographical information of the nonucleotide along with their structure, their chemical and their electronic properties. Now along with structural information, IR and Raman spectra can also be applied to study the macromolecular orientation, how their molecules are oriented in a given system, the crystalline characters of the polymers and meal molecular weight. Now in case of nuclear magnetic resonance, in this study NMR, what we do is it is a non-destructive study, non-destructive technique, and it is established on the effect of nuclear magnetic resonance and give information about the structure, dynamics, reaction state of the molecules and their chemical environment. In a typical NMR spectra, slight differences in the frequencies of the NMR are observed due to the different molecular environments of the nuclei. In X-ray diffraction technique, there is a systematic array of substructures like repeated distances of a same magnitude in the range of about 0.05 to 0.25 nanometer. The material produced an intrusion pattern and give information about the shape, about the size of the colloidal carrier structure. The two chief diffraction methods commonly used to study the structural arrangements of polymers in the colloidal carrier systems are namely wide angle X-ray scattering, which is known as WXS, and a small angle X-ray diffraction, which is known as SAXS. In DSC, it measured the different amounts of thermal power required to maintain the same temperature both in the sample as well as reference, and it plotted it as a function of temperature or time. So we are plotting the behavior of material when it is exposed to a certain temperature range, and it will show its exothermic or endothermic peaks. So DSC is a useful technique in the investigation of thermal properties, providing both qualitative as well as quantitative information about the physicochemical state of the drug. Another technique which we use in this system is X-ray diffraction methods. X-ray diffraction is used as an important technique to investigate the mode of attachment of atoms or molecules in a given material. It tells us about its crystallinity, whether it is amorphous, it is crystalline, whether the peaks are sharp or whether peaks are broad. So all these things give the information about the material. The concentration of drug in absolute alcohol is determined spectrophotometrically, either by using a UV visible spectrometer or by using high performance liquid chromatography. Other property is lamellarity determination. Lamellarity determination of colloidal formulation is done by using P31 NMR or cryo-electron microscopy or Sexis techniques or transmission electron microscopy. The P31 NMR technique, the addition of manganese reduces the P31 NMR signal and from phospholipids of the colloidal formulation due to the interaction with the phosphate groups of phospholipids and causing alteration in signals. The enormity of signals before and after the addition of manganese determines the degree of lamellarity. Now, in vitro drug release study is a very important study. In this case, the drug release from the colloidal formulation, it is determined by using the dialysis method. A suitable volume of preparation of the sample is put in a dialysis bag. Dialysis tubing is made up of regenerated cellulose by tidying its both ends. The dialysis bag is hanging in a suitable solution and retained at about 37 plus minus 0.5 degrees centigrade. The dispersion is shaken by using a magnetic bead at a desired RPM for uniform distribution of the contents. A known or definite quantity of the dispersion is sampled and replaced with the same amount of fresh buffer or the medium. After a suitable interval to maintain the uniform volume of phosphate buffer system, the temperatures of the samples are also maintained. The amount of drug is enumerated by using technique like HPLC or by using technique like UV spectroscopy. Now, cell line studies. A cell line is a cell culture with cells that have the same genetic makeup. Every cell line is used for a precise study due to its unique idiosyncratic features. It is therefore important to identify the characteristics of each cell line. There are some common human cell lines which are used for cytotoxic studies or permission studies. These includes HeLa cell lines, National Cancer Institute's 60 cancer cell lines, which is NCI 60, prostate cancer cell lines like DU145, LinCap PC3, breast cancer cell lines like MCF7, MDA-MB438, T47D, THP1, which is an acute myeloid leukemia cell line, then bone cancer cell lines like SEOS2 cells, MCF7, which is a cell line for breast adenocarcinoma, then NCL H460, which is a cell line for non-small cell lung cancer, and A375C5, which is basically a cell line for melanoma. The techniques like fluorescence spectroscopy, spectrophotometry, and enzyme-based methods and electrochemical techniques are used depending upon the nature of encapsulation material. Any purification technique can also be used to check the storage stability of the colloidal formulation, like leakage of the content from the encapsulated core or the effect of various disruptive conditions on encapsulation, because these conditions can result in, if they are accelerated, they can result in disruption of the membrane and release of the content. Now, unentrapped drug is separated from the encapsulated drug with a refrigerated centrifuge by applying strong centrifugal force. To determine the percentage of encapsulated drug, lysis of colloidal formulation is done with absolute alcohol and sonication, and then the amount is evaluated by using different techniques. So students, let's now summarize what we have learned from this module. It may be painstakingly challenging to develop nanocolloidal system with preferred drug release profile, which can be easily regulated by changing the nature or morphology of the contiguous membrane. The characterization of nanocolloidal carrier is used to determine their suitability for different drugs and their stability in the different environment. It also helps in determining the efficacy of a drug in a particular site. The nanocolloidal carrier system with the desired characteristics can improve the stability, can improve the efficacy, tolerance, and bioavailability of the drug. Thank you.